Hello, traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective. That means we're looking at supply and demand on the charts and using that to determine timing and direction. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little, and if you want to subscribe, just reach up in the right hand corner. Anytime I push content, you get a notification. So we had the Fed yesterday. Traders just couldn't decide what to do. By the end of the day, yesterday, they had started to sell it off. Well, today, they kind of reversed course, went back the other way. NDX up. You had the Dow up. Everything across the board, right? Nothing huge, but gains nonetheless across the board. The Russell actually outperformed this time instead of trailing. So we had a little bit of a reversion back to what we've had before. We had gold and silver just smacked. Again, gold actually got under that area I was talking about on the monthly time frame, that where it needs to hold. I think it was like 137.50 or so, if I remember right. Still have time to, repair the damage, but not so good when you look at it that way. Bonds got a little bounce today. The dollar was the story again, so let's start there. Looking at that dollar index, big spike up. The way this works typically, you get immediate effects overseas, right? Because the euro, the yen, the Swiss franc, the British pound, even the Chinese yuan, they all go down. You don't get the bad side of this immediately in the U.S. And what that means is that it's going to make your exports more expensive, right? So your dollar is going to choke off some of your exports. And so the big cap companies are going to have to take charges, charge impairments against their earnings. That usually gets felt, next earnings report, their earnings report after that. So this dollar surge, you're not going to see until the second quarter probably on the earnings balance sheet. So it's not an immediate effect, but it will have an effect as it rockets higher. And if you look at it on the weekly, clean breakout. ABCD structure takes it to about 27 on the UUP. And if you got the breakout taking place here, and if this really is the start of something larger, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is a very large move, potentially to the upside. We're talking about from basically 21 to 26.5, right? Take that 5.5 added on here, 29.5. You got to go way back to the turn of the century to find some numbers probably that match those. So with the dollar skyrocketing, what does that do for the markets? Well, it doesn't hurt them. It tends to help them. And that's because you're seeing big gains taking place overseas, and that tends to bleed over into our markets. Inside days, as you know, inside days in neoclassical don't really tell us much. So you actually have to look somewhere else to see what it means. And so when we get something like this, where the day prior and the current day is inside, right? The bar is inside the prior one, we don't really get any new information. The new information would be released on something of significance, like a test of this area down here or a test of that area up there, but neither one takes place, so you don't really get anything to tell you something new, right? If we pop over to the NASDAQ, on the NASDAQ, same thing. You didn't get any new information. What you got actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was earlier today. I thought it was going to be kind of a negative situation today because you were actually going over back under, but it ends up you got a little bit more volume, so that kind of cancels it out and says, hey, you can go test it again tomorrow. Same thing for the NDX. NDX has the same setup, got the exact same setup. The Russell, now the Russell has been trailing. The Russell actually went up. This is the one that's slightly negative by the end of the day, and that is that it did test the top, had a little less volume, but again, we're splitting hairs here to say that that's negative because the volumes were fairly close. So what are we going to do tomorrow? Yeah, it looks like you're going to try again. Try again to go up, try again to test, unless there's something else out here that we haven't noticed. So let's pop into the sectors and see if there's anything there. So we'll start with the ones that are feeding the NDX. Let's look at the biotech first. And you know, biotech is just caught in a virtuous cycle that's a negative virtual. This guy is caught in this range. You got to get back upside this, you know, to get anything going to the top side. You could argue you got a little small ABCD structure going to the upside right now, you know, but honestly, that's not much. You could also argue that you've got an ABCD to the downside still trying to play out. So, you know, it's just a mixed picture. When I see something like this, what I do is say, you know, it doesn't really tell me anything. I'm not going to mess with it. And I think that's probably what you ought to be doing here. Now, with interest rates going up, that hurts home builders. Those are heading down. Actually, let me finish those things that affect the NDX the most. Let's go to the SOX. Okay, now the SOX actually gets a breakout. Now, this is a big piece. Each of these represents about a third. Gets a breakout, has another ABCD structure at the top side, and you also have another one here. So you got nested ABCD structures now to take you quite a bit higher still. Unless this comes back tomorrow, gets back down in here, that's a clean breakout, and it looks like the SOX is going to try to run higher again, and that's going to power the NASDAQ. The other thing that's powering the NASDAQ, of course, is the big cap technology. Let me see if I can grab those for you. And that, of course, is the big three: Apple, Microsoft, and Google. So let's start with Apple. So Apple has traded, look at this, Apple has gotten into this bar finally. So you got the breakdown bar here, right? So Apple's right at it now. The top of this is 11586. The number over here, 11523. So you still haven't got over it. If it's going to fail, this is where it's going to fail at. We'll have to see what we get tomorrow. This is you know, basically trying to get over it, and I think that's going to be a tough spot to get over. So Apple is kind of a toss-up. Looks like it's going to probably fail and try to come back the other way. Microsoft, so get some sort of retrace. Microsoft's the next largest, and that's still an inside day off that big bar, not telling us anything. And then Google, let's see what Google looks like. And if we look at Goog, same thing. And that one's still a toss-up, and it's still trying to do the same thing too, trying to get over a swing point high in this case. So all of these seem to be stuck. So you got 1 out of 3 that's trying to help. Okay, elsewhere, IYT. Nothing gets tested, folks. They tested to the upside, more volume. That can test again tomorrow. XLB, tested to the downside is what I was talking about. Nothing gets tested to the downside. Oh, here's one. So the XLB tests the downside and reverses. So you have a test on this little bar here, right? You get into it, you get back over it. You got a little bit more volume, almost actually a little bit less volume. That's exactly what you want. That's bullish. This thing's going to try to rise tomorrow. So XLB's pointing up. Let's see about XLE. XLE, now there's a test, and that's a good one, right? So once again, you get a test into something of significance. Right? Volume's lighter. So as you come, in other words, as you come into this bar, you compare it. Volume's lighter than this one. You reverse. No more sellers. They don't want to sell down there. What are they going to do? They're going to try to reverse it and take it back up again. That's XLE. XLF. Now this has been the golden goose of this run, and it is struggling with that top. Still going sideways, and I still don't see anything but a little bit more failure there again. XLI, this one's going to try to test tomorrow, something of significance, so we might gain some information. XLK, Test the top has less volume. Okay, now this one actually looks like it wants to come back. So that would argue that the NDX is probably going to get hit a little bit tomorrow. XLP, under back over. That's wants to try and rise. That's kind of a safety net. Oh, that's same thing with utilities, under back over. Healthcare, nothing. Discretionary, again, nothing. So again, we don't have many signals out here, folks. You know, the story's about the same. It's a strong market. When you don't have signals, you just stay with the trend. All right, let's look at a couple stocks here. Square, this has been a kind of a hot IPO. This has been moving up. You've got a nice, nice continuation trend going on, some big volume coming into this. You got a big volume spurt here. That test, it continues to test, trying to break over it, but the volume's not there. This attempt today looks like a failed test of that high. Probably going to try and pull back again tomorrow. Still, they got this tight range. Unless you lose that range, you want to try to buy towards the bottom of the range. The ideal entry would be down around this guy, but it's not quite ready to run. Another one that we've been looking at is DB or Deutsche Bank. This is the German bank. Now you have a cross-currency issue here in that, you know, as the dollar goes up, that kind of works against you. But you've had some nice consolidation runs, right, as this thing is consolidating again. Assuming that dollar lightens up a little bit at some point here and you get a continuation push in the financials, which those financials are pretty hot right now over in Europe, then, of course, you could get some continuation on this particular stock. It's over a swing point high on the weekly and coming up to one on the monthly. That sector that it's in, you can look at it with EUFN, and you can see that you've got some degradation taking place here inside bar. It's had a nice big run, big spike. Again, I just think that these are going to consolidate a little bit and then try and take off. Something to put on your watch list. Tomorrow, same thing, folks. Friday. It's getting towards the end of the year. You're going to have quad witching tomorrow. That's going to put some juice into this market in terms of volume. Question is which way are they going to trade it? Where are they going to pin those things? I don't know that answer right now. It looks to me like you just got to hang with the trend because that's the way it is. If you don't have clear signals telling you to get out, then you stay with whatever the trend is. Have a great, I'll see you next time. Good night.